In this video, I'm going to show you the difference between curves and levels, what they can do, and which one you should be using when you're working on your photos. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me yet, my name is Silvia. I'm a specialist in maternity photography. In this channel, I talk about photography editing techniques to help you make more money with your photos. Now, let's get into the video. Both tools, curves and levels, can be used to change the luminosity and colors of your photos. They are very similar, however, one of them gives you more control than the other. Everything that you can do in levels can be achieved in curves. We can say that levels is a limited variation of curves. In curves, you have more control and precision of changes that you are doing to your photos. It's pretty much similar when you think about the difference between retouching a photo in Lightroom versus Photoshop. Everything that you can do in Lightroom can be done in Photoshop, but Photoshop will give you more control of the retouching process. So first, let's understand what both tools can do to your photos and where you can find those tools here in Photoshop. If you go down here to the filters, you have many options, and right here you can see that we have levels. So it creates a new layer of levels, and we also have the option of curves. So let's understand what they do. Let's start with levels. Levels is a tool where, as I said before, we can work on the luminosity and the colors of a photo. This is the levels tool, and everything that I want you to pay attention so far is that we have this mountain here, and this mountain is representing our histogram, is telling us the luminosity of our photo. Also, we have this triangle here on the left, one in the middle, and one on the right. If you notice, the left one, it has a darker color. It is representing the blacks, our darker areas. If we go to the middle, this one is representing the middle exposure, the middle tones of our photos. And this other one is the white. It is representing the whitest part or the lightest part in our photo. Now this mountain, it is our histogram, and what it's telling us is that we have a lot of pixels that are in between the black and the middle tones. When we look at the photo, we can see that this is a dark photo. We don't have a lot of luminosity, a lot of white in the photo. It is very, very dark, and you can easily see this here. So let's say that I want to change the exposure, the luminosity of my photo. The only thing that I need to do is to grab the triangles here and just drag them to one side to the other, and you're gonna see what it does to the photo. So for example, if I wanna light it up my photo, I can grab the whitest part of the photo and drag to the left, and I'm slowly gonna start making the photo a little bit lighter, right? Because now the histogram is getting closer to the white triangle. So it means that my photo now has a white point. If I get closer to the belly or to the forehead, I can see that now this part here of the photo is white, right? So now the histogram is telling me that I have a white pixel in my photo because the white triangle is touching the white mountain of the photo. Okay, so let me go back. Let's say that I want to just light it up, the photo. However, I do not want to get all the way to get white pixel. I can just get the white triangle, slide to the left a little bit. Let's say this is good because I can see that the highlight here is starting to get very, very light. Now I can move and just drag the middle tones. If I move to the left, it's gonna light it up the photo. If I move to the right, it's gonna make it darker. So let's say that in my case, I wanna make it a little bit lighter. So I just drag a little bit to the left. Now let's say that I wanna create a little bit of contrast because I lost some of the contrast when I lighted up the photo. So I can grab the black triangle and make the shadows and the black points to be even darker. So I can just drag it to the left and make a little bit darker. So just by moving these three triangles here, I create more contrast to my photo, and I made the exposure a little bit better. So that's before, that's after, before and after. But now let's say that I want to make the blacks a little bit lighter and not actually darker. We have two other triangles down here, and this is exactly what they're going to do. They're going to do the opposite of what I can do in the triangle above. So this triangle here represents also our blacks and dark areas. And if I move and drag to the right, I'm gonna start making this black a little bit grayish. I'm gonna start lighting it up the darker sides, and the same will happen with the white. If I use the white triangle here, I'm gonna make the whites and highlights even more lighter. But let's say that I want to darken out that part here, so I can just drag the whites to the left in the second section here, and I'm making everything darker. The white parts are getting darker. But you can also do a composition with all the triangles. So let's say that I want to light it up a little bit my photo like I was doing it before, and now I feel like I lost contrast, so I'm gonna give myself a little bit more contrast. But I think that the light parts are too bright, so I'm gonna darken it up just a little bit. And I think that the black, I don't want the black to be black, the dark areas to be very, very dark. So I'm just gonna go back a little bit with the black, and it's already making a little bit lighter. So this is something that you can do, mixing all the compositions here of the triangles. And the reason why I'm working on the luminosity is because we are in the RGB channel. The RGB is the mix of all the colors, red, green, and blue. And when they are all mixed together and we are working in all of them together, we ended up working in the luminosity. So here I'm not doing anything with the colors. But now let's say that I want to work with the colors. I can just change my channel to red, green, and blue. Let's go to red. The visual is gonna be the same, and when you drag the triangles, you can see that you are changing the colors of the photo. Let's say that I want to do a different coloring for my photo, and I want the shadows to be a little bit more bluish tones, like a little bit more cyan. When we are working with the red, you need to understand that you are adding or removing red to your photo. And when you add red, you are just making the photo to be more red. And when you're removing the red, you're just making a photo to be more cyan. So you need to understand about complementary colors. And here I have a representation of a color wheel. So the complementary color means the color that is directly opposite in the circle. So if I'm removing some add, it means that I'm adding some cyan to my photo. So for example, if I drag this middle tone here to the right, I am removing red from my photo, and because of that, my photo is getting a little bit more cyan. But let's say that I want to add some red, so I'm gonna drag to the left, and now my photo is more red, right? Now let's say that I want to just add a little bit of cyan to my shadows. What I can do is to drag this black triangle that represents my dark areas, and I can drag to the right, and I'm gonna be removing some of the red from my photo, which will automatically add some cyan to the photo. Now I can go to the other channels as well, green and blue. For example, I can go to the green because I think that the photo now is looking a little bit green, and I wanted to remove the green. So if we have the green here, I know that the opposite of the green, looking at the colors wheel, will be magenta. So I'm gonna remove a little bit of the green, and I will be automatically adding some magenta to my photo. If I drag my middle point here, it's easier to see. So to one side, I add magenta. To the other side, I will be adding green. So let me go back here to one. Now let's say that I want to add some yellows to my highlight. So I have the yellow here, and I know that the opposite of the yellow is blue. So it means that I need to remove some blue to get some yellow on my highlights. Now I'm gonna go to the channel blue, and I'm gonna drag the white triangle to the left here, and I'm already adding some yellowish to my highlights. As you can see, if I go all the way, you can see with more intensity. And why am I using this one here in the second section is because if I do use the triangle here, I will actually be adding some blue, and that's not what I want to do. I want to actually add some yellow to the highlights, and I want to add more blue to the darker areas. If I get the dark triangle and move to my right, I'm gonna be adding yellow. That's not what I want to do. I want to add some blue. So I'm gonna get the second section here and actually drag to the right, and I'm gonna be adding some blue. Now I think that the middle tones are a little bit magenta, so you can just be playing with all the colors. I can go to the magenta here, looking at my colors wheel, and I know that the opposite color is green. So if I move my green channel, I'm gonna be adding or removing green or magenta. In this case, I think that it is a little bit magenta in the middle, so I can just drag it out a little bit to remove the magenta, just a little bit. I can go back to the reds and add a little bit of red to the highlights as well. And this is becoming a pretty cool color. And now I have also worked with the color on my photo. So here's the before and here's the after. Before and after is a totally different color grading, exposure, everything's different. So this is what you can do with levels. You can change the exposure of a photo, give more contrast, less contrast. You can change the colors of your photo. So what is the difference then between curves? In curves, you can do everything that you can do in levels. However, with levels, you can be more precise of where you want to change the luminosity, and I'm going to show you how. Let's stop viewing this layer and let's go to levels now. As we can see, levels and curves, they are a little bit similar. So just like in levels, in curves, we also have our histogram here. So this mountain here is representing the luminosity of my photo, the exposure of my photo. If I go here to the channels, I can work with the RGB channel where I'm gonna be working with the luminosity, the exposure of my photo, or I can work the channels separately where I'm gonna be working with the colors. So we have the red, the green, and the blue. Same thing that we have with the levels. However, when we look here to the curves, we can see that now we have this line going to diagonal. But we still have the triangle here that the black is representing the black just like in levels. And if I drag to the right, it's gonna make the blacks darker. And I also have the white triangle that if I move to the left, is gonna make the photo lighter. So it's working the highlights and the widest point of my photo. What we don't have here is the middle tone triangle, how we have in levels, this triangle here. And also we do not have this section, the way that it's designed in levels, but we can work all of that in here as well, and I'm gonna show you how. If you notice this line, it has two small dots, so I have a dot right here in the beginning of the line and another one up there at the end of the line, and this line is what we are actually gonna be moving instead of the triangles. So if I drag this dot, I'm gonna be moving the black as I showed you before, but I also can move up. So when I move up, it's exactly the same thing, let me go back here, as moving the second section here. When I move to the right, I'm making the dark areas of my photo to be lighter, right? So when I go back to the levels, I can make the darker areas to be lighter as well, just like in levels. So I can make it darker and I can make it wider. And if I want to move both at the same time, here in levels, I can make it darker and brighter at the same time. So I can do the same thing in curves as well. If I go back to curves, I can get this middle point, and instead of dragging to the left and to the right or up and down, I can drag to the middle, and this will give you the same effect as if you were moving the triangles in the levels too. And I can do the same with the white. I can grab this dot, bring it down, and I'm gonna make the photo darker, or I can bring it to the left and I'm gonna make the photo wider. And this middle tone that we have here in curves, that we can be adjusting the luminosity as well. It can be done in curves by creating a new dot. So I can grab right in the middle and create a new dot here. This dot is representing the middle tones in my curves. So if I go up, I'm gonna make the middle tones lighter. And if I go down, I'm gonna make it darker. So everything that I can do in levels, I can do with curves. And if I wanna go to the color channels, I can do the same thing. I can make it more red, or I can remove red, add in cyan. I can go to my greens and do the same thing. And I can go to the blues and do the same thing and actually get the same result as we got here when we are tweaking the levels tool. So what is the difference between levels and curves? In curves, I can create the middle tone here, but I also can create many other dots around this line and actually just move one part that I wanted to work with. So I can choose any points of the photo and work whatever I want. Of course that you can make the photo look very weird like it's looking right now. So let me go back to the regular line. And what you can do right here is kind of creating 3 points. So I have the whitest point, I have the middle tone points, and I have the black points. But I also can create the shadow points and I can create the highlight. And let's say that I want the highlight to be a little bit brighter and the shadow point to be a little bit darker. Now I'm giving a little bit of contrast to my photo, but because my photo is already too dark, now let's go back. Or you can just do another curve that is just going up with the highlights and now bringing down the shadows. And now you have created a different contrast than before. And here's the before and here's the after. So the difference is that I cannot create these other dots here in the levels. I have only the 3 points that I can work with. Let me go back here. I only have these 3 points that I can work with, but I cannot work in the middle. Levels won't let me create a different point here. So I can only work with the blacks, with the whites, and with the middle tones. That's why the curves are more precise. Let's say that it's a little bit hard for you to look at the line and actually work on the luminosity of your photo. Another thing that you can do is to click this tool here, the hand, and choosing on your photo what you wanted to light it up and what you wanted to make it darker. So you can see that when I'm moving with my tool here, there is a circle point here that's kind of moving. It's showing me, so for example, if I go here, it's showing me that here, my shoulder, the luminosity of my shoulder is exactly this point here. If I go to my face and just click on my face, it's telling me that my forehead, exactly where I clicked, the luminosity, if I work the luminosity right here, it's gonna work on my forehead, right? So what we can do is to have this hand here, and let's say that I wanna make this part here of the background a little bit lighter. So I can just click here, and while you're pressing, you can just drag up or drag down. So I want to bring more light, so I'm gonna drag up while I'm still pressing it, and then I'm gonna let it go. So it created the dot here, and it already went up with that part that was dark, and now it's lighter. But let's say that now I think that my body, my face, is too light up. So now let's click here on my forehead, and if I bring down a little bit, it's taking that luminosity from my forehead, from my face. But now I feel like the photo doesn't have a lot of contrast. So I wanna make the blacks a little bit more black, the blacks from my pins or my clothes. So I can go to my pins and I can just drag a little bit down, just a little bit. So this is another way that you can work with curves. So let me go back again, and let's say that I wanna make my body a little bit lighter. So I go here and I'm gonna go up, and I'm making my body a little bit lighter. I think that my forehead is too light, so I'm gonna go down just a little bit. And I think the blacks could be a little bit darker, so I can just click here and just go down a little bit, and now I'm creating a little bit of more contrast. Now let's say that I think that my photo is a little bit too dark, so I can just go with the line and go up a little bit to light it up a little bit of the photo. And let's say that I want to make this area a little bit darker, so I just point here and bring it down. I think I did too much. Let me just go back. I'm gonna click here and just bring it down just a little bit. And this is a different contrast again. So you can just be playing around a little bit with the curves and get to the luminosity that you like. So let's say that I'm really happy with the luminosity now. Here's the before and here's the after. My photo is a little bit lighter, but it's still keeping a little bit of the contrast. Now let's work with the colors. Let's do something similar that we did before. I want the shadow areas to have a little bit more of blue, so I know if I go up, I'm adding red, and if I go down, I'm removing red, which is giving me a little bit of cyan. And now I want to add a little bit of red in the highlight, so I'm gonna get the brightest area here, and I'm just gonna drag a little bit to the left. And now I'm just playing with the dark tones and with the highlight tones. And now I'm gonna go to the blue. I'm gonna add some yellow to the highlights, just a little bit. And I'm gonna remove a little bit of the yellows from my shadows, just a little bit. Now I'm gonna go back to the red, and I wanna add a little bit more cyan to my shadows. I'm gonna go to the greens, and I wanna remove a little bit of the green from my shadows. So I'm just gonna drag a little bit here to the right. So now we have worked with the exposure, we have worked with the colors, and here's the before and after with the levels. And just like how we were playing with the RGB, with every color here, I can also create many different dots as well and just work in a specific area. Or I can also use the hand. So let's say, let me go back all the way. And let me just work the exposure a little bit again. Okay, now let's go to the red, and let's say that here on my body, I want to make it a little bit more red. So I can click the hand and I can just select a part of my body and I can just drag up. However, the background is getting some color as well, and I don't want the background to get this red. So I can click in the background and just bring down the colors. So here's the before, here's the after, before and after. Now let's say that I want to add some blue to the background. So I can click here and I can bring up. But now the blue is being added to the color of the skin as well. So I just click the skin and I'm now bringing down. So the same thing that you can do on the RGB channel, you can actually do with any of the color channels as well. And you can use the hand and just, play a little bit with it and be more specific. I want this point here to be more green or to be less green, which will give me more magenta. And you can just mess around and see the color that you're getting and see the exposure that you're getting. But the difference between curves and levels, everything that you work and can do in levels is something that you can do in curves, and curves you can do much more. So the question is, should you use curves or levels? And again, it depends in what you want to achieve with your photo. Let's say that you just want a simple contrast. You can pretty much do that with levels, and now you have a contrast. If level can do the trick, just use levels. Is a little bit more simple than curves. But if you want it to be more precise and adjust a specific point, you will need to use curves for that. For me, 99% of the time, I go with curves because I can do everything that levels can do, and I can do more So it makes more sense for me to use just curves. But now you know the difference between curves and levels, what you can do with them, how you can change the exposure, the colors of your photo. Click the like button if you like the video. If you want to know other ways to improve your retouching skills to make more money with your photos, subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every week. You can watch other videos as well. For now, this is everything. I hope this video was really helpful for you. Until next time.